Everyone, welcome. My name is Omar. I'm 15 years old and I'm DIL Ambassador from Saudi Arabia. Today I am co-moderating with Rosie, another DIL Ambassador from the United Kingdom. I will hand it over to Rosie to introduce herself.
Thank you, Omar. Hello, everybody. My name is Rosie. I'm 13 years old and a DIL Ambassador from the UK. On the call with us today, we have Mr. Adegbite with us to talk about his journey and life experiences up to his current position. At the moment, he works with IFAD and he's worked with a number of other organizations in consulting. First, I'll pass it over to him himself to introduce himself and tell us a bit about his journey and where he started.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you are. It's my pleasure to join you today. Thank you very much for the privilege and also the opportunity to engage with such a dynamic and group of people. So it's really a pleasure to be here. My name is Sahid Adegbite. I'm from Nigeria. My journey starts a very long time ago. I won't tell you how many years. However, I studied in Nigeria. I studied engineering, and I moved on to work in the information technology industry. So I worked for many years as a computer analyst. I worked in finance. I worked as a consultant. I ran my own business, but I also worked in international affairs and diplomacy. So I'm an executive coach myself. So coaching is a passion. So this is where being engaged with DIL is so much exciting for myself because I also ran a coaching and development company. So my passion is really about being able to develop people and also about international affairs. So more recently, I've worked in international affairs and diplomacy, in security, also in European regional security, and then even in development. So one of my passions right now is at IFAD to ensure that we develop rural people and we bring food to the people that most need it, and working towards the UN agenda for 2030 to end hunger and to make poverty zero in our world today. So my passions are really to try and make a difference and contribute my little bit in my career. And thanks be to God, I've been able to do that so far. And I look forward to engaging with you today. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you. Let's go into the questions. Firstly, I will start with my questions. So question one, were there any individual who got into science or engineering because of you?
That's an excellent question, Omar. And I have to say, yes, for sure. I started my degree in engineering. I was passionate about numeracy. And even in my school days in boarding school back in Nigeria, people saw how much I loved mathematics and how much I loved working with numbers and computers. And as a result, I encouraged a lot of people to do that. In fact, my younger brother went on to study medicine. My younger sister also went on to study chemical engineering. So, you know, I have a lot of people who are interested in the sciences, just maybe as a result of my sibling influence, you can put it that way. And even now in my career, I speak with a lot of very young people, interns who work in my organization. And it's a passion of mine to engage with them and encourage them. In my experience, I think digital numeracy and being able to be numerical and literate, whatever field you work in, is a very great skill to have. So even if you're in the social sciences, even if you're working in medicine, if you're working in the arts, I think numeracy is quite an important skill. So I hope to continue to encourage people to do that, Omar.
Thank you, Mr. Adegbite. Now I will hand it over to Rosie.
Thank you, Omar. I also have a question for you, which is, when talking about agriculture, what do you believe are the best benefits of preserving and storing crops, and how could we all Sorry. And how would the process help farmers during this pandemic or a potential locust attack?
That's an excellent question, Rosie, and very insightful. You see, one of the challenges for agriculture in the world we are in now is the environment climate situation. So you know how climate change has impacted the way we live, has impacted our weather. And one of the most vulnerable people are those that rely on agriculture. You may not know, Rosie or Omar, but 70% of the food that we eat comes from rural people. And 70% of the production of this food is by smallholder farmers. So it's by the family farmer, the man and his wife and his children who farm. So the world really relies on these people. And what we have found is that with the COVID-19 epidemic, they are most impacted. Yes, it starts in the urban areas. And yes, it starts as a health emergency because we all have to make sure that we look after our health. But what you will find is that this now progresses to an economic adversity for the world. And you will see people losing jobs. And after that, it comes to a food security issue where people are unable to feed themselves, they're unable to make a living. And the people most impacted are the farmers. So the way that we prevent things is to mitigate against climate change, is to provide insurance for the farmers so that when things like you mentioned, the locust, invade their farms, they have the insurance, they have the ability to come back. They have been protected, they've been given the funds to rebuild and to be able to recover. But also for the long term is to make them a little bit more resilient. So provide them with the technology, provide them with the right seeds that are more resilient to climate change. So if this happens again, it could be locusts, it could be storms, it could be desertification, where the land is no more arable, the land is no more feasible for farmers to use. So when they face these issues, they have the support and they have the financing. Financing is very important. As you know, the world needs money. We need funds. And this is where IFAD comes into it. It's okay to say we'll help the farmers, we'll do that, but we have to provide the financing. And so by doing all this, things like the COVID epidemic and all other climate emergencies, we can mitigate it for farmers. And this is what we have to do, Rosie. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. I'll pass it over to Omar to ask the next question.
Thank you, Rosie. The next question is, as for the future, do you have any goals and plans that you would like to achieve, or you have already reached everything that you wanted to?
Excellent question, Omar. I mean, if I said I've reached everything that I wanted to, that would be incredible. But as you would expect, that is certainly not the case. The world, there's a lot to be done in the world. And I have to say that my aspirations will continue and they will outlive me. So the things that I want to do will still go on after I'm gone. And this is why yourself, Omar, and Rosie, and the rest of the young generation are the people that can take this forward. So there's many things I would love to do, and I'm still aspiring to. I'm very fortunate and blessed to be working in the United Nations system, which means I'm in a system where social good is at the top of the agenda. So, it's very fulfilling to be in a role where what you want to do is make a difference in the world and not just about profit in business. Of course, it's important to involve the private sector in social good. And that's one of the things that I would like to do. I would like to be able to use the combination of my experience. So I've worked in the private sector, I've also worked in the public sector, to somehow use that experience to attract the private sector to be more engaged in social good. So to be able for companies, for multinationals to see how it's not just good to do good, but it's profitable to do good. So for me, that's also another passion where if I'm able to, in my role, be an advocate for this within the UN, within the international organizational arena, be able to convince even more actors to be involved in social good in our world. That would be a dream come true for me, and I hope that I'll be able to do it. And I hope that Omar and Rosie and everyone, we can partner somehow in this world to make that difference.
Thank you, Mr. Jabir. I will pass it to Rosie now. The next question.
Thank you. Another question that I have for you is, what do you feel makes IFAD so different to other organizations? And how have you found it to personally make your work better?
Wow, what a great question. Of course, there are many reasons IFAD is different, and a lot of them make it a unique organization. I think one of the things is that IFAD is what I call a hybrid organization. And by that I mean it's one, a United Nations agency, so it's part of the United Nations, but it's also an international financial institution. So you may have heard of the World Bank or the African Development Bank or the Asian Development Bank. These are all international financial institutions. So IFAD is a combination of both. And because of that, it's able to leverage the policy side of things. So where policy, whether it's agricultural policy or development policy, it's able to have a voice in that arena. And similarly, it's also able to raise financing. So it's able to go out and finance projects as well as providing technical and policy expertise to those projects. So by being this hybrid organization, it makes a big difference and it works in a unique way. The other thing that IFAD is really unique about is because it has a focus. IFAD focuses on the smallholder farmer. IFAD's focus is on the little farmer in the rural areas, because we recognize that majority of the world food production comes from there. And we know that these people are most vulnerable. So IFAD focuses entirely on that sector, focuses also specifically on agriculture, not on other, of course, other areas like infrastructure and financing and other areas are important, but IFAD focuses on agriculture because it knows that is the basket of the economy of many countries. And if we can address agriculture and address rural people, we can make a difference. So by having that focus and being part of that, you know, it's great to be part of such a unique organization.
Thank you. I found it quite interesting how you were talking about how they almost pinpoint down to where it all really starts and how important that really is. It's really interesting to me. Thank you. I'll pass it over to Omar to ask the next question.
Thank you, Rosie. The next question is, have you ever been through a period where you felt like you were giving up? If yes, how did you pass beyond that?
That's a great question, Omar. And I think we've all been through moments where we're not achieving what we hope or things are very difficult. Yeah, I've been in very many instances. In my work environment, a lot of it sometimes is to do with when you work with people from many different backgrounds. And when you find it challenging to connect with such people. They could be your co-workers, they could be your bosses, they could be your customers. But in the work environment, especially in an international organization like I work in, you come across many very different people who speak different languages, who interpret things differently. And sometimes this causes a lot of tension. Sometimes these causes a lot of aggression, even maybe sometimes, where people do not understand each other or misunderstand the cultures. And I have been in many instances where this has been the case. I have worked in places where I'm the only African. I've worked in places where I'm the only Black person. That sometimes I have seen myself as an ambassador in that instance. And even where there is a lack of education or misunderstanding of cultures, it is important that you look at yourself as an ambassador. And in similar ways, over the years, you tend to learn that you don't judge people. So I've made my mistakes, as we all have, and made assumptions about people that has made relationships difficult. So over the years, it's great to learn that you shouldn't make prejudgments about people and understand that people have value. So these kind of tensions that happen have mostly been about relationships in the workplace. And quite often you learn as you go. You learn sometimes the hard way, and it's good to learn also from mistakes.
Thank you, Mr. Adegbite. Now I will hand it over to Rosie.
Thank you. The next question that I have for you is, we've had different speakers on the platform talking about different areas of agriculture, whether it be through STEM, microbiology, inventing, and more. Do you have any projects for young people that we as young ambassadors could get involved in? And as we have our professional mentors like Mrs. Basu and Mrs. Ayesha that are helping us to build STEM projects within DIL, do you think there are any that IFAD could implement?
You know, there are many, many facets that young people can make a difference at IFAD. One of the issues we have faced in the international system is that a lot of the decision making, even about young people, is not made by young people. So if you've ever had the opportunity to watch the UN General Assembly or watch debates on television, I hate to admit that quite often it's middle-aged men and women discussing the issues of the world. And quite often you don't see enough young people on stage. You know, you don't see many like the Greta Thunbergs and the Malala Yousafzais. You know, they seem to be the exceptional voice when we're talking about issues relating to education, which concerns, for the most part, young people. So what IFAD is trying to do in its meetings, when we have global meetings, we're trying to bring young people to the stage. And we invite many young people who are living in rural areas, who are working in agriculture, who are part of subsistence farming, whatever it is, the expertise they have. We bring them to the stage to explain and to talk to the decision makers about the issues that young people face today. Because quite frankly, the young people understand it best. So if there are avenues for you to engage with the organizations and to see if they will provide a platform for you to educate us, quite frankly, about the real issues that young people face, so that when the decisions are made, they're not made by people who don't understand these issues. I think that's one area that you could look to get involved. And I know many organizations would be glad to be able to engage young people even more. The other area, you mentioned STEM, and that is really quite important, you know, science, technology, and the media. And these days, young people are more intuitively astute about these areas. You understand. I always laugh about how my two daughters are always educating me about how to use my phone, and they get very frustrated on how slow I am sometimes. So it's an anecdote, but it's a reflection of the truth that young people are more astute when it comes to technology, when it comes to digitization. And agriculture, for one, is an area that needs technology. We use all sorts of things. We use drones to look at you know, arable land. We use mobile devices for making financial services available to people in remote areas. So there's much use of technology in agriculture. And we acknowledge that young people are more attuned to agriculture, because this has been a part of your life, Rosie. It's been a part of your life, Omar. It's something you've grown up with. People in my generation just generally learnt it later in life. So you know, in those areas, when it comes to research, when it comes to studying about how we can use technology to solve the world's problems, the insight and the input of young people like yourself would really be valuable. These are two of the things that I can think of at the moment.
Thank you. I found it really amazing how you were talking about how they let the young people give their ideas and they let them talk and to implement their ideas so that it can be taken higher and really acknowledged, which I find is really amazing, that even though sometimes there's the thought that, oh, they're younger so they may not understand it as well, that it is being taken to thought. So I found that, yeah, I found that quite cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Omar has left. I think it's a Wi-Fi problem, so I'm just going to go on to the next question for you.
Okay.
Do you think agriculture has a place in schools as a standalone course subject?
Well, absolutely, yes, yes, yes. It's a very interesting question, because I'm quite surprised you asked it. Maybe I'm behind the times, because I did agriculture when I was in school. And obviously things have moved on with digitization, and unfortunately maybe agriculture has been seen as a side thing, not its subject on its own. So I remember my growing up in Nigeria in boarding school. We did agricultural science as a standalone subject, and it was always practical and theory. And we all had a little plot of land in the school field, and we would plant, and you would grade it on it. So depending on how well your beans and your maize and your yams were doing, you would have a grade in agriculture. So I think it's very important. It's the basket of civilization, and as such, I think it definitely has a place. And I think other subjects which are tangentially related, whether it's technology, whether it's microbiology, they should have an element which shows the benefit that they can produce for agriculture, because it is one of those industries that will sustain the world, and we have to ensure that we keep that going. So I think it's very good that students learn about it.
Thank you. Just as you were saying that, it made me think of when I was in primary school and we were growing sunflowers. So we'd be going out and we'd be seeing how we'd see who could get the tallest. But it was odd because we'd never really taken it as a subject. It was more just a thing on the side for fun to see, oh, who can get the tallest sunflower, or who's taking care of their sunflower the best. But it's odd because in secondary school, it's not really taken into thought or consideration. So yeah, so you'd say that it should definitely be a course subject in secondary schools and higher?
Absolutely, and even more so now because of sustainability. We talk about sustainability of our systems, and also it goes beyond, Rosie, just planting. It also goes beyond the food systems, right? Because agriculture is the beginning. However, there's a broader look. So when you wake up in the morning and you have breakfast and you have your cereal and you have your milk and you have your bacon and then you have your sausages, there's a whole network of things that have happened to bring that to your table, right? There's a whole network of production, and we call that the value chain, where the food comes from the farm right up to your plate. So there's whole things that happen in that process, and it's part of how our world rotates. So it's very important that people learn about that process. So agriculture in itself, the planting and the rearing of animals is one side, but the whole process where it goes to feed the world and make us sustainable in all the things we do is very important, because it's core to who we are as citizens on Earth.
Thank you. Wow, thank you.
You're
I came up with another question from when you were giving your introduction, actually, and it just made me think. You said coaching was a passion for you and is a passion for you. Where did your passion start and how did it develop into a job for you?
That's an excellent question, and you're taking me down memory lane, Rosie, which is quite nostalgic and quite pleasurable, so thank you. But yes, I mean, I think it would have been about 15 odd years ago. I was at a crossroads in my career. I'd been working as a consultant, which is essentially telling people what to do. And I was just sort of reflecting on a change in career. And I happened to just come across a number of seminars, personal development seminars, which talked about developing people, and was very encouraging for me at the time, because it encouraged me to understand that I could do what I wanted to do with the right encouragement, with the right mindset, and with the right reflections, with people able to help me reflect, that I could achieve beyond what I thought was possible. And I really sort of transformed my thinking then, and I really wanted to do the same with others. So then I went to train myself as a coach, which is essentially helping people understand that the passion within them is something that they could use for achieving. And not about telling people what to do, not about being an expert, or not about sort of pretending to know it all or anything of the sort, but just by questioning them and asking them. And I saw it had enormous value. And so for a couple of years, I ran an organization, you know, really reaching those who could not afford traditional coaching, because of course, you had a situation where coaching training can be very expensive. So we worked in such a way that, you know, we made it accessible to those who would not normally be able to afford it. A very rewarding 2 years of my life. And so following that, even in my career, I find the skills that I learned during that period always valuable. It's helped me encourage my staff. It's helped me be able to motivate them. It's also helped me relate to people that maybe I would find difficult to relate to otherwise. And so it's been enormously beneficial.
Wow, thank you so much. It's so inspiring to hear you saying how you've continued, you've motivated yourself, and you've turned a passion into a reality. It's amazing. Wow, thank you. Omar has made it back on, so I'll pass it over to him to ask his questions. Yeah.
Omar, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Okay. The next question is, what were the main difference between studying around and studying in UK, United Kingdom?
Wow, amazing question. First of all, of course, facilities are slightly different. So if I told you that I did my first degree in electronic and electrical engineering, and the only time I got access to a computer was in my final year, that would be very interesting to understand. So even though I was in one of the premier universities in the country at the time, facilities were not as advanced. So that was one difference, studying in West Africa compared to studying in the UK. But on the flip side, the other difference was the diligence in my studying in Nigeria. The diligence of hours and hours of labor and study. It was very intense. It was very rigorous in understanding theoretical principles of engineering, of mathematics, of communications, of computer technology. So understanding the theoretical basis was really quite rigorous. So much so that when I went to London to do my master's degree, quite interesting, my master's degree just seemed to be a revision of what I had done in my first degree back in Nigeria. So, but then I was exposed to more practical aspects and more technology aspects. So that combination really helped me go. And that's something I always encourage people to do, to continue to be lifelong learners, never to think learning is over. It's always there. It continues forever. I think having the concept that, oh, once I finish my university, then I'm done with learning. No, it doesn't work that way. The world evolves, the world changes. So what I studied in an MBA 20 years ago is less relevant. And if I did an MBA all over again now, it would be a completely different learning experience because the world has changed since then. So even with the different locations, Nigeria, the US, the UK, you find that your learning experience is very different and it has a very different dynamic to it. So you will always have something to add on to it. So I always encourage people to keep learning.
Thank you, Mr. Adegbite. Now, the final questions is, if you ever have kids, will you encourage them to brush the same path as you?
That's a very difficult question. Put it this way, in as much as I would want to, deep down, I realize that I shouldn't. And that's what's happened. I have two daughters. My elder daughter is 23 and my younger daughter is 18. And in as much as I would say, I would think that it would be good if they followed the STEM path or did engineering like me, I know that they are individuals in their own right. And I know that their passions may not necessarily be the same passions, but they have to pursue their passions and I have to encourage them to pursue their passions. So my elder daughter studied history and French because she loves to understand how the world works and how the world revolves. And she's passionate about languages. And she did very well. And she works in media and marketing at the moment and doing very well, you know, editing and working in foreign affairs. And my younger daughter is about to start a course in theology. And quite interesting, people say, theology? You know, what are you going to, but she's so passionate about philosophy, about theology, also about poetry and also about the arts. And you can see the passion in her eyes. So in as much as parents, I think we're always tempted to let our children follow the same path. There are many paths, and we know that, you know, letting them pursue their passion and enjoy that pursuit of passion would be most, you know, beneficial for them. And as such, I do know, and I do say one thing to a lot of young people, your life and your career is very, very long. It's a long time. If you're 20 now, you have 50, 60, 70 years, 80 years of life ahead by the grace of God. And as such, the experiences are multiple. And even if you don't do something when you're 20, nothing stops you from doing it when you're 50 or 60. So it's really, you can always turn things around and you can always go in different paths. And I always say people should sort of be flexible about what they do. Be ready to change course at any time and just enjoy what the world has to offer.
Thank you, Mr. Adegbite, right?
Adegbite, yes, correct, Omar.
Thank you. Now I'll hand this over to Rosie.
Yes, I've just come up with another question that I was interested in asking. What coaching tools could you share as one of the professional mentors with the ambassadors?
That's a great question. I think I'll go straight back to the basics. And the best coaching tool that I ever had and ever used and continue to use is called Grow. And many coaches will have heard of it, and it's GROW, and Grow stands for Goals, Reality, Options, and Way Forward. And I think it's an acronym, and if you work through, first of all, starting with your goals, what is it that you want to achieve? You know, and what difference would it make if you achieve those goals? So you sort of reflect and ask yourself those questions. Once you establish that, then you go to R, which is reality. So what's happening at the moment? Where are you? Do an assessment of the current situation. Also, what's not happening? You know, what would you like to happen that is not happening? And what's stopping you from doing that? So you do an assessment, with the R of the current reality. And then there's O. O is options. And this is where you brainstorm. You know, you don't restrict yourself. You say, what can I do? What are my options? If money was no object, what would I do? If I had all the resources in the world, what would I do? So you explore different options without restraint. And then finally you come to W, which is the way forward. And the coach with yourself will explore, based on the options and the goals, what are the next steps? Because really, coaching is powerful when you take a step, when you take action. So you can reflect, you can design, but if you don't take one step, however little that step is, you have to take one step. And that's when change starts to happen, when you start to take those little steps that you realize will take you closer to your goal. So it's a very simple acronym, GROW. It's widely used. It's not complex. Many coaches use it. So it's not sort of magic. It's not something that no one is aware about, but it's really powerful, Rosie.
Thank you. I've written it down just so I can make sure to look at that after the call, but I'm sure what you've said will definitely stick with everyone in the call. Thank you. I've written GROW down and I'll definitely have a look at that. I do have another question, which will be my last, and then we will open the call to any audience questions. But the last question that I have for you is, you mentioned how the world is always changing and evolving. So how do you always stay up to date and calm when working on a day-to-day basis?
That's not an easy thing to do, Rosie, and it's a really important thing. And the adaptability of us. And I already mentioned one, which is the continuous learning. Once you have that mindset that you always want to learn, and once you enjoy learning, it's important that learning you get yourself to a position where learning becomes something you enjoy. And you're not only doing it because you want a job or for what you want to achieve. It has to be an intrinsic part of what you enjoy. Then the other thing is to go for the experiences. Take the opportunities that come your way. I read a great book some time ago, which the title of the book was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. So quite often, the reasons that we're unadaptable is because we haven't had different experiences. We haven't that experience of doing something we've never done before and just having a go. And I say over the years, you learn and take a little risk, take risk and do new things when the opportunity comes. The worst case scenario is you won't do it as well as you thought, and you will learn a lot anyway. And that's not such a bad thing if you learn a lot from a difficult experience. It's part of being more resilient. So I always say that when opportunities come, feel the fear, but do it anyway. And that would help you to sort of be in a position where you become more and more adaptable as things change. So you lose the fear of change as you continue to do new things consistently. This is what I've found in my life experience.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow, it's just what you're saying is so inspirational, and I'm very sure that people will take this on board. Wow, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. I'm going to actually open the call up now to any further questions from the audience. And if you do have any questions, please do just unmute and ask away.
Hi, Mr. Adegbite. I'm 𝐇𝐢𝐬 𝐂𝐚𝐫𝐿 Ambassador from the UK. It's been a pleasure to hear what you've had to say so far. So the question I have for you is, amidst all of your achievements so far, you also you've learned several languages. So would you hope to develop any? And also, has the learning process of any of these languages impacted the way you approach your work?
That's a very, very insightful question. And I really would wish I could say that I'm sort of fluent in many languages. but unfortunately I can't. I have learned to be conversational in German, in Italian, a little bit of French, just because I've lived in those countries for some time. But I have to admit that one of my greatest regrets is not actually dedicating enough time to be more fluent in those languages, because that's a skill that is really, really valuable. And it's one of those things that makes a difference with connecting with various people across cultures. I know that I lived in India as a little boy, and I managed to pick up a little bit of Hindi. And it's amazing how just a few words of Hindi, when I meet an Indian colleague, can just make a difference to making that connection. So it's definitely something I would put on the table, that people prioritize learning languages. And don't make the mistake I made. If you have an opportunity living in a country other than your home country where they speak a foreign language, make an effort to speak it even more. Yeah, take time out to learn that language. You won't regret that. It will make a difference later in life and in your career.
Thank you. I certainly advocate that statement. And I agree that you said you'd lived in India, and the few words that you did learn helped to break cultural barriers, which I think is amazing, because I remember we lived in Saudi Arabia for a couple of years, and we've had different cultural experiences from Italy to France. And I certainly agree that it does help, even if you don't speak the language fluently, to make connections, which I can imagine certainly has assisted with the work that you do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Adegbite.
My pleasure.
If anyone else has any more questions, please feel free to unmute and ask.
Melissa, you've got a question. You had about 3 questions you submitted. Would you like to ask them, please?
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Melissa and I'm 14. And my question is, what advice would you give for upcoming entrepreneurs?
Thank you, Melissa. That's an excellent question. It's almost like you've read my mind in many ways. So that's really brilliant, because one of the things I always advise people is to, in their careers, to try and have a balance of entrepreneurial experience as well as working in a multinational, so a business. Now, of course, I've run different businesses, some successful, some not as successful, and I've learned a lot over the years. And one of the advices, it's a difficult thing to swallow, but one of the advices I give people who are starting off in business is to make sure that you know clearly who owns the business and who runs the business and who is the head of the business. I think partnerships work very well when you get together with people, but ultimately there is one person who is primarily responsible and accountable for that business. And it's quite important to be clear about that. So that's another thing. So when you get into partnerships, when you're doing something with people, in a way, it's best to know who's leading it and who's supporting it. So that is one sort of difficult advice to share, but I always share that advice. And the second thing is all about planning, right? Make sure you spend a lot of time planning what you want to do with the business, just to be sure that you've checked all the bases, you know all the environment, you know what your marketing, you know what your business is all about. So do a lot of planning in that respect. And the third thing I always advise people is go for something that is your passion. Let your business be something that you're really passionate about. But in that passion, don't let that passion override a functioning business. So I've seen people very passionate about a subject, but not enough financial astuteness for that business to be sustainable and for business to last. So whilst you have to be passionate about what your business is, you mustn't forget the commercial side. After all, a business is there to make money. A business is there to be profitable. And if you forget about that aspect of your business because of the passion won't last very long, I'm afraid. So I always advise people to make sure they balance their passion with realism and a commercial astuteness to be able to make sure the business is profitable and sustainable. I hope that answers your question, Melissa.
Yes, thank you. And another question is, if you had the chance, would you do over your old job again?
Absolutely, 100%. Even the ones that I hated when I was there, I would do them all over again because I learned so much from those even quite difficult experiences. So, of course, there will be things that you would change in hindsight. You know, if I was advising my old self, there are many advice I would give and say, you know, you should have done it the other way. But all in all, my work experiences, I would do them all over again. And even my educational experiences. I have to even be honest, I had some difficult times during my education. I had to sort of change schools because I had challenges with achieving the grades I wanted at one point. And I moved schools a little bit because of the international career of my parents. And it made things quite difficult. But even those difficult moves and those difficult times really shaped me to have different experiences that I use to my advantage today. So even if you're having a difficult time in one aspect, there's always a way to make it to your advantage. So don't be despondent about a difficult challenge that you're currently having, because it is something you will be able to use in the future that will give you the resilience or the knowledge to be able to get ahead. And so I wouldn't change anything.
Wow, thank you. And my last question is, would you recommend your job to anyone?
Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes, Melissa. I love my job. I love the people I work with. Even if I'm not, my particular role means I'm not directly working with farmers or directly working with people in the rural areas, but I often get the privilege to be able to visit, and I see the difference it's making in the lives of people, and that's very rewarding. So every day I love being in the office. I love engaging with people from different nationalities, from different countries, with different perspectives, and it's really great. So I would definitely recommend it to anyone who's interested. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you, Melissa.
Does anyone else have any questions, please? I know Mrs. Bosu is online, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have a question. I have two questions.
Yes, ma.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Good evening, because I'm in the US now. Thank you so much, Mr. Shahid Adegbite, for sharing your great experience and the great information. I'm familiar with IFAD because I'm spouse of an IFAD staff.
Okay.
And my question is, I'm aware that IFAD has been implementing business continuity at distance for most of its field officers, and since COVID-19 started, and also helping countries to respond to this COVID. And my question is, how did this impact your budget planning of 2020?
Thank you, Mrs. Basal, and it's a pleasure to meet you, and it's great to also be engaged with the spouse of a colleague. So would be really delighted to even engage further after this call on various things. And that's an excellent question you asked, because it's obviously been a very difficult time for many organizations, and IFAD is no exception. And I think one of the things is, you know, there was a question asked earlier about how IFAD is different from other organizations, and I mentioned the mandate, and I also mentioned the fact it's a UN and IFI. One thing I didn't mention was the fact that one of the IFAD things that is really important is access and going out to our beneficiaries. So a lot of our projects, we tend not to just do it from afar. One of the key things of the way is we go out to these remote areas and work directly with the farmers and the women and the children and the households and the villagers. And so a lot of our project officers go to a lot of remote places, and it's part of how we do project supervision. And it's a very key part of how IFAD wants to be unique and different. Now, as you can imagine, because of the COVID, travel restrictions were certainly sort of reduced, and we were unable to travel. So we've had to be doing what we've called a lot of remote supervision and looking at our projects remotely. It has reduced the engagement with some of the beneficiaries, but thankfully we now have a returning back phase where we can begin to engage more. There's still quite a lot of restrictions for travel in many of the countries. And what we have found is it has slowed down the pace a little bit. So we will have to readapt. We are definitely, when it comes to how we're managing our budget, you can understand that what we would have normally allocated for travel will not be fully utilized by the end of the year because we've had 3 or 4 months of reduced travel. So we're spending that to do a lot of the remote supervision, but also to make sure that we can catch up on our projects in the latter half of the year and the last quarter of the year, as well as making sure that when we go into 2021, a lot of the catch-up work will be happening. And so we're just basically reprogramming the budget to ensure that that work continues and the pace is done. I wouldn't go into too many technical details, but that's broadly what we're doing there.
That's great. That's great, yeah. My second question is, my husband's always shared with me your blogs in LinkedIn about your great, the great success of your daughter. Could you share with our ambassador the secret behind her success, if possible?
I feel flattered, and I like to say the secret of her success is partly to do with me, but it has nothing at all to do with me. I know it's, I don't know if I could say it's the secret of success, but they've worked hard, and I have 2 daughters, and they've both done brilliantly, and I think it's just really as a parent, you do the best, and you can't get it wrong, you can't get it right all the time, but just being available. I think being available and encouraging always makes a difference to daughters and how they do, and of course, if you're blessed to provide them with the opportunities where they're able to get the right education, they're also exposed to the right influences in a family, then you pray and hope that it will turn out okay. And I think that's a key element of things. And often we say example is always the best teacher. So no one's perfect, but we always try to at least set the right example. And by the grace of God, that will work out fine.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I wish you all the best, your daughters and your family.
And to you too, ma'am, and to you too. Thank you very much for the kind words.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you so much. We've got Mr. Lawrence Todd and Eddie with questions still. Mr. Todd, would you like to go ahead, please? Okay, Eddie, would you like to go ahead, please, while we wait for Mr. Todd, please?
All right, ma. Good evening, sir. My name is Joshua. I'm from Nigeria. I'm an ambassador. You talked about passion earlier on when you were answering the question from Melissa. What would you tell someone or the young ambassadors who don't have a passion yet or who are still finding their way in the world?
Well, it's a great question, and what I would say, Joshua, and then you're welcome, and thank you for asking the question. It's nice to hear a fellow Nigerian and a young aspiring ambassador. Really delighted to have you. I think I wouldn't say people don't have a passion, but I would agree with you and say you haven't fully discovered a passion, and that often happens. And what I advise people to do when they explore that is to see what excites them. So ask yourself, what makes you dance for joy, right? What makes you cry with emotion? What makes you smile? So, I ask people to reflect and think on those things. What makes you laugh? What would you do even if you were not paid for it? What would you do even if nobody asked you to do it? What would you like to do? So when you start to ask yourself these questions, and perhaps get I think you're all sort of fortunate to be part of the DIL Ambassadors program. It's a really excellent program. But as part of that, when you get sort of that support, that mentoring, coaching support, these are things that help you discover your passion. We're all talented in our own ways. We all have a great contribution, and we often need help to help us discover that. And not just for young people, for anyone. You need help, you need support, whether it's through a mentor or a coach or a parent or a teacher. That support through your journey is very important. So I would advise people to continue to seek that support, to share with their classmates or colleagues at work or co-students, whatever it is. Engage with people, share with people, network with people. I think these are all the things that come together to help us to discover our passion ultimately. And passions change. Your passion could evolve. You might be passionate about something in your earlier years, and then you discover a new passion. So you shouldn't sort of feel restricted that you have to find this one thing and that would be the magic bullet for the rest of your life. Often your passion could evolve. It could have different facets. So it's something that is very malleable, and no one should feel despondent that, oh my gosh, I haven't found my passion yet. That means my life. No, it doesn't actually work that way, Joshua. So I'll just say, keep tugging at it and you will discover it and you will know it when you get it.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. If there are any further questions, please do ask. I'm not sure if there's one from Mr. Todd that he'd like to ask.
Hello, Saeed. I was rather curious to know whether IFAD help rural communities with the problem they seem to have in terms of not only growing food, but also finding sufficient fuel for heating and lighting. Very often, a lot of these communities have a challenge of having to take down lots of trees, which of course, in the long term, leads to desertification and denuding of agricultural land and a reduction in rainfall as well. To what extent does your organization help to mitigate these areas?
Thank you, Mr. Todd. So that's a really good question, and it's where a lot of our partnerships have to come into play. Now, you're absolutely right. Energy, infrastructure, and many other aspects are crucial. So, even if you address, the agricultural aspects of rural communities, if there's lacking of energy, if there's lacking of education, then that's always going to be a gap in having a holistic solution. Now, so while IFAD focuses on rural communities and focuses on agriculture and benefit agriculture, a lot of our program is co-financed. So we work a lot with, for instance, the African Development Bank as an example. And the African Development Bank, if you look at their strategy, they talk about the high five, the Nigerian president of the African Development Bank talks about power, and one of those high five is Power Africa. So to ensure that, as you know, electricity, for instance, is quite a big issue in Africa as a whole. And I know that's also quite a big issue in my home country, Nigeria. Even though it's industrialized extensively, it's still an issue. So we roughly co-finance and work with other organizations like the African Development Bank, like the World Bank, to work together to design holistic projects. And that's the essence. So IFAD is focused on the agricultural aspects, looks at climate change, but partners with extensively. And that's how we bring everything together. There's a recognition that not one organization can do it all, and different organizations will bring different expertise to the different areas. So we bring in that agricultural expertise, whether it's livestock, whether it's on agricultural seeds, whether it's on sustainability and resilience to climate change for agriculture. And then organizations like the African Development Bank I mentioned would bring in that expertise of power, of infrastructure as well. So we don't necessarily do full-blown infrastructure projects. So we wouldn't be building a road to an inaccessible area. It wouldn't be part of what we do. But if part of the project that we're working on means that we're working with farmers who have inaccessible, they're unable to take their products to the market because there's no good roads, then we would partner with the African Development Bank, who would have the infrastructure piece of that project and ensure that all the things work together for successfully helping the rural communities. I make it sound all seamless, but it's far from that, as you can imagine. It's always fraught with complications, and there's a lot of problems, and there's gaps, and we learn a lot of lessons, and we look at projects that are only moderately satisfactory. So it's quite a reiterative process of learning, and by no means are we sort of figured it all out yet, but this is how we generally do things. I hope that sort of gives you a good overview.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, Mr. Adegbite. I have so much respect for you, because I met Mr. Adegbite was my trainer when I became a life coach. So, well, seems like so many years ago.
It does.
I've had that respect for you since then, and I've been
following
your
thank you for
journey.
the word.
So, to have you on the platform is a great honor, because it's like you're helping the DIL ambassadors to grow. We're not even sure how big we're going to grow, but the plan is to become global. And we are actually global because we've got so many young people, so many young leaders from different countries on this platform. And with the help of professionals like you, it's like, you're giving us a platform in so many ways, in actually taking your time to show value and to give the kids, and I shouldn't use the word kids, to give these young leaders, a platform to stand and be themselves. Now, when Mrs. Basu was talking about your daughter, that was quite commendable, reading about your daughter, Sarah, because, I can imagine just seeing her video, because I watched the video and I was like, wow. But I'm not surprised, because I know you, I've met you, and I know the kind of I can imagine the sort of hope, the sort of trust, the sort of energy you put into your daughters on the daily. And, so for you to actually give us some time on the ambassadors platform and share some of that with the young leaders is definitely a treasure we're going to hold on to. Having you on the platform is an added bonus. Having the likes of you, Mr. Todd, Mrs. Basu, Mervat, everybody that actually joins us every day, physically and otherwise, to support us in growing, we can't forget. So thank you so much on behalf of the ambassadors, on behalf of all the other professional mentors. Omar, Rosie, you guys did a fantastic job. Omar, today was your first day moderating. Wow. Rosie, thank you so much. And it's like we're looking forward to having so many, professional mentors like you on the platform as we grow bigger and bigger, and in a positive way. So, ambassadors, if you're on the platform, please unmute to thank Mr. Adegbite, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for coming to join us and assist us in the life coach advices that you've given us. And it's been a wonderful journey so far, being a DIL ambassador. Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much for the call.
Thank you, Mr. Adegbite. It was a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
On behalf of DIL Ambassador, I just want to thank you for this inspired speech, answers, and thank you very much. And thank you, Omar, Rosie. I like your appearance, actually. I like your questions. You are, I'm sure that in the future, I'll see you somewhere in the top. So thank you, and I hope, inshallah, we will work together always to enrich our ambassador knowledge and do a lot for them, because they are our future. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adegbite. It has been such a wonderful call, and so I've learned so much that I'm sure I'll hold on to. Things from inspiring to the grow. There's so much to take from this call, and I have to thank you for coming on today.
It was really my pleasure, and I'm honored to be able to have this opportunity to be able to share. And I must also add that yourself, Rosie, and Omar, you were excellent facilitators. I'm also inspired by how young people as young as yourself can be so dynamic. So I really find, it was quite inspiring for me too. So, and thank you for the opportunity, and I'm delighted to have been participating in this. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Mr. Nazi, thank you so much. Mr. Nazi is one of our professional mentors that came on to thank you as well. You'll be meeting him on the platform anyway, because he's always there. Thank you. I'll just round up the call. And once again, thank you very much.
Okay. Have a good evening, everyone.
And you. Thank you. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.